Program Manager, and she's going to be talking about some of the invasive species that are threatening Seneca Lake. Lydia Martin.
Testing out my buttons. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I plan to talk about invasive species and land stewardship today. As Ben said, I'm Lydia Martin, the Terrestrial Invasive Species Program Manager for the Finger Lakes PRISM, which stands for Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management, hosted over at the Finger Lakes Institute. And before I get started, a lot of people, I'm the terrestrial program manager. Most people will think about aquatic invasives such as hydrilla, water chestnut, zebra mussels when it comes to water quality, but terrestrial plants and insects also can have a large impact on watersheds and water quality. So I plan to overview our program a little bit, talk about invasive species in general, and then have highlight a couple species such as hemlock woolly delgid and spotted lanternfly and some more relevant hot topic species that's going on in this region. So like I said, the Finger Lakes PRISM is hosted over at the Finger Lakes Institute, which has the mission to translate knowledge and research about the Finger Lakes watershed into collaborative action. So we're all about protecting Finger Lakes water resources, connecting science and research with the public and community needs, as well as provide actionable science. And the Finger Lakes PRISM, for those who have never heard of it before, is one of 8 prisms across the region. You can see there are, buttons. There's, a whole Long Island prism, one in Lower Hudson, Adirondacks has their own. And then the Finger Lakes region is 17 counties total, is about the size of New Jersey. So it is a very large area to manage, and the mission of the PRISM is to reduce the introduction and spread of invasive species, as well as the impact throughout the region through detection, prevention, and control measures. And it's funded through the New York State Environmental Protection Fund, which is administered by the New York State DEC. But like I said, it's a very large region, so we depend heavily on all of our partners. Right here is the list of just some of our partners throughout the region. It goes from lake associations. Seneca Lakes Pure Water Association is one of our big partners, as well as, the New York State DEC, New York State Parks, Soil Water Conservation Districts, all organizations that are worried about natural resources have to basically work together to try to accomplish our goals. And it's really inspiring to me when working with all the partners and the different people on the ground, just doing great work. And so just thank you to all the partners for all of your help. So what is an invasive species? It is a non-native species that causes harm to the environment, economy, or human health. So there are a lot of non-native species that are naturalized. They're not really causing any problems. They're just here. An example is, some might disagree, but dandelions, they're naturalized. So yes, they are non-native, but they're just part of the ecosystems now. So to really be considered invasive, it has to have a large negative impact. And then specifically getting into water quality, some of the major ways that invasive species can in fact affect water quality are listed right here on the slide. So increasing erosion and sediment runoff. Right here is a picture of Japanese knotweed. This species will just grow and make complete thickets, almost like knotweed forests along the streams, and really just increases erosion and causes the sediment to run off into the streams. Also, reducing wetland and riparian function. Here is an example of Phragmites. Phragmites is a very large grass many might see along the roadsides and ditches and all sorts of areas, but it also invades wetlands that are really unique habitats and have species that are really at risk of being declining in populations or even going extinct. Phragmites specifically is an ecosystem engineer. It sucks up a lot of the water and it grows really thick and makes it so no other species can grow, and also affects wildlife and also water quality and the hydrology. Invasive species often alter nutrient cycling. Right here is a picture. This is just soil, but this is the soil left behind by jumping worms. Jumping worms are invasive species that were recently detected in this region, I believe 2018. Most earthworms in this region are non-native, but jumping worms are especially dangerous because they consume all of the organic material and completely change soil structure, and then which also changes how water filtrates through the soil. So that is a big one as well. Right here, you can't really see it in this picture. I apologize, but invasives also decrease biodiversity and ecosystem resilience. This right here is showing a dead ash stand. Many of you might be familiar with this if you're in this region. So when all of the ash trees started to die, that increased the light in the forests, and that allowed a lot of the invasive shrubs to take off. And a lot of, deer don't eat many of the invasive shrubs. Also, those are great habitat for ticks. So basically, it's completely changing the structure of forests and natural communities. Invasives can also change light conditions and water temperatures. I'll get into this one a little more, but this is a picture of dead hemlock trees along a stream caused by hemlock woolly adelgid. So those hemlocks are really important for shading the streams for species like brook trout that Roxanne was just talking about. And but when you lose those hemlocks along the streams, the temperature of those will increase and change water quality and what wildlife and fish can live there. So our first case study species that's really important in this region is hemlock woolly adelgid. But first I'll start talking about the eastern hemlock, Tsuga canadensis. Hemlocks are foundation species, meaning so many other species depend on them to survive. They shape forest structure and ecosystem functions. They regulate stream ecosystems by providing that dense shade I was talking about, critical for trout and other cold water species. But they have their dense needles create little warm areas in the winter when the snow covers the branches. And so there's just little microhabitats that are created. They're also one of the few species that can grow along those steep gorges, all the gorge parks around here from Ithaca, Watkins Glen, Stony Brook, Fillmore, all these parks, the hemlocks right here, this is at Fillmore, are all completely growing on these edges, and not many species can do that. So it's really important to help protect them, because if we lose this species, it's just going to completely alter the region, and especially these state parks. So yeah, like I said, they support a lot of diversity through their microhabitats. They protect water quality because they stabilize those soils and stream banks, maintaining moist, stable microclimates. So losing them would just be really detrimental. And they're very long-lived. They can live anywhere between 300 to 800, even more years. So that's another reason why it's so important to protect them, because they take so long to grow. So it's not just like you can just easily plant some species that are just gonna come back, or even replanting hemlocks. They're gonna take a minute to grow and be functional. So hemlock woolly adelgid, Adelgis tsugae, is an invasive aphid-like insect that feeds on the sap of eastern hemlocks. They're really, really tiny. You really won't see them ever. You can identify them by these white woolly sacs here on the underside of eastern hemlock trees. For those who don't know eastern hemlock very well, they have these needles that it's really distinct lines, these light green lines underneath them, and they'll lie really flat on the leaves, twigs. Spruces, the needles will go all the way around. Pines, the needles are in little bunches, but the hemlocks are very flat and tiny needles. And so this feeding habit disrupts the nutrient flow and just depletes nutrients and can kill hemlocks in about 7 to 10 years. So the hemlock woolly adelgid, often called HWA, causes needle loss, crown thinning, and eventually mortality. That will impact forest structure, stream temperature, erosion, and biodiversity, as I've already mentioned. HWA in New York, as you can see, it is everywhere at this point, except for the Adirondacks. We're still, I like to think of us in the Finger Lakes region as protecting the edge, protecting the Adirondacks, protecting Canada, and protecting our region as well. That's also really important. But our efforts here are really important on a larger scale. So it was first detected in the Hudson Valley in 1985. So that was quite a while ago. So some of these species, they really don't spread right away. They sometimes certain things, increased recreation, increased people in trails, birds, certain things will then allow the population to explode, which has happened. So the early focus was on monitoring the spread. They were protecting high value trees. But then kind of recently in the 2010s, there was a shift to active management, doing chemical treatments to protect the hemlocks. And now there's biocontrol research and resilience breeding. So that's this slide right here, HWA research. There's a project of lingering hemlocks that is, they're looking at hemlocks that are surviving in forests that have reached over 80% mortality. And then they're taking scions from those trees and breeding them to try to produce resilient trees. They're doing this also for ash, and I think there's talks about doing it with beech. I don't know if that's actually implemented yet, but this is a common strategy, especially with trees, to help prevent resilience against the pest. Also, there's biocontrol research that's been ongoing, organized by Cornell. They use predatory insects. There's a beetle and a fly to help suppress HWA. And those are gathered from the Pacific Northwest, where those predators are actually natural in the community. And so there's really rigorous testing that goes on in research that before biocontrol can be released, but they have been releasing them for years at this point in parks all the way all across New York. And they are surviving winters, which is great, but they still need time to establish populations. And so a lot of our work now is with chemical treatments. New York State Parks, they're doing a lot of work doing chemical treatments in their parks, and then the DEC as well. And we're trying to now, as PRISM, we've been trying to establish what's our role in HWA work. And so doing some surveys earlier in the spring indicated maybe doing some control trainings or things like that and helping people get trained in how to do these treatments. And then hopefully we can protect these trees long enough for the biocontrol and the lingering hemlock resilience breeding to help protect the hemlocks long term. This here just shows a slide of all the different players in HWA management. You have the state agencies, federal partners, PRISMs, private landowners, citizen scientists, local partners, like soil and water conservation districts, and also the researchers. So this is a huge effort. And another one of the things where it makes me, it gets me in the feels just seeing all the people in the same room trying to accomplish the same goal. And that goes with a lot of the other invasive species as well. All right, so another hot topic is the spotted lanternfly, Lycorma delicatula, which many of you I'm sure have heard of at this point. If not, here it is. Spotted lanternfly is a plant hopper that feeds on over 70 species. It was introduced into Pennsylvania in 2014, likely by contaminated stone shipping material. It lives in disturbed areas, edges, roadsides, rail lines, and it's been spreading rapidly through the Northeast because they lay eggs on absolutely everything and anything they can that's flat surfaced. And so they're just one of those species that's very difficult to manage because they can move in many ways. They weaken the host trees by depleting nutrients, and they also produce this honeydew from all their feeding, and that will develop on the trees and lead to sooty mold buildup and also attract pests like wasps and things like that. So they're a really big nuisance in urban areas. And they're a huge threat to local vineyards, agriculture, and recreation. So the PRISM, we've been working with local vineyards in the area, trying to help them manage this issue and stay informed. So right here is just a quick image of the life cycle. You got egg masses, which are over winter. They can be on everything. They're just dormant. The nymphs will emerge in the springtime. I did just look. We do have an infestation, unfortunately, on campus down by the lake. And I haven't found them yet, but they have emerged in Long Island. So they're going to start to emerge as these little black insects with the white dots. And then they keep going through the instar stages until they get to the fourth instar stage, which is the bright red. They almost look cartoonish to me. They do really stand out compared to other insects. And then in July, they emerge as the adults. So understanding the life cycle is really important for understanding how to manage them and what management activities are most effective at which time. Right here is a distribution map by county of SLF through the entire east coast of the US. As you can see, it has is spreading in all directions. Right here is just a zoomed in image of New York. So it's very prevalent in Long Island, New York City, Hudson Valley, and now it has been going up through Binghamton and Ithaca. And then last year there was a population that seems to be spreading up between Seneca and Cayuga lakes. I'm pretty optimistic that the lakes are actually helping prevent it from spreading east to west as much. Maybe I'm just a little too optimistic. But I think there's 2 more counties that are going to be added to this list as well soon. So, and this does look like it's everywhere, but it still is at low enough numbers in our region. So, the counties are large, so it's highlighting the entire county, but they're really concentrated in certain areas within those counties. So management for spotted lanternfly, the most important management method is prevention, inspecting outdoor items, especially if you're traveling to an area that has high populations. If you're going downstate, if you're going to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, check your camping equipment. Don't move firewood, and also spreading the word. There's also monitoring efforts that PRISM is involved with, where we check trees regularly using circle traps. Those are most effective in areas where SLF is not there yet, so that you can see when it gets to the area. Manual and mechanical efforts, destroying egg masses. You can use either alcohol or freezing. You can use the circle traps as well to help decrease numbers. And then also vacuuming nymphs and adults. This was Lindsay. We had one tech last summer, and she was out vacuuming the spotted lanternfly. So she got pretty acquainted with them. There's also chemical treatments that you can do. And PRISM is not doing any of those, but like the Department of Ag and Markets, they're leading the management effort, and they're focusing on really high transport areas to do that. The update with spotted lanternfly from Ag and Markets is it's no longer a eradication possibility at this point. It's going to be a pest that's on the landscape. And so we all just kind of have to do our best to work with who manage the populations, and potentially, we can decrease the spread and have a success story in New York. I forgot to mention, so the spotted lanternfly does feed on over 70 species, but it highly prefers the tree of heaven. So I can't talk about SLF without talking about tree of heaven. Tree of heaven is also an invasive species, which was introduced in the US in the late 1700s as an ornamental tree, common introduction method. And it was widely planted because it grows really fast and it tolerates urban areas. Common on roadsides, railways. It produces thousands of seeds, and it also spreads by wind, water, root suckers, in all sorts of ways. They will form dense stands that displace native plants, and they also are allelopathic, which means they release chemicals in the soil that prevents other plants from growing, similar to black walnut, if you're familiar. And so managing spotted lanternfly will also involve managing tree of heaven. So to help everyone learn a little bit about Tree of Heaven. These are the leaves right here. So they got these big compound leaves. This is all one leaf with all these little opposite leaflets. They have the smooth edges with this little nubbin tooth right down by the base. That's their distinct feature. They also have these small yellow flowers. They emerge in late spring, and then their seeds emerge as these samaras, similar to maple trees in the late summer, early fall. And then they have this smooth bark, it's almost cantaloupe-like with these little streaks down that turns, that gets a little more, gets more ridges with age. They have two main lookalikes in the area. You got the staghorn sumac and the black walnut, but both of these species will have serrated edges, and that's a big tell. And then also the flowers or fruit of the sumac are these bright red, cone-like structures. So very different than those samaras. And then black walnuts obviously have a very different fruit. So if they're fruiting, it's a little easier. Another way is the Tree of Heaven. When you crush the leaflets, they will smell like this rancid peanut butter smell. It's pretty gross, and once you recognize it, it's an easy way to identify that it's Tree of Heaven. So these are some management efforts for Tree of Heaven. Prevention obviously is important as well. Monitoring, manual and mechanical treatment is actually not recommended at all. It will make things worse. You try cutting down a Tree of Heaven and it will shoot up root suckers all within 50 feet of the tree. It's incredible, honestly. So chemical treatment is the way to go. It's a fancy method called hack and squirt. So obviously, if anyone is doing pesticide treatments, follow all pesticide labels and things like that. So managing Tree of Heaven and removing it from the area will help decrease spotted lanternfly from being drawn into the area, because even though it does feed on all of these species, when we've been doing our surveys in this region, when populations are at low numbers, it really does stick to the Tree of Heaven. So something that PRISM is doing is, if anyone is interested, for anyone who wants to remove Tree of Heaven, we are offering in the region to go map Tree of Heaven for them, provide maps for them, and then they can have those so they know where the trees are if they want to remove. So that's one of the things that we've been doing for vineyard owners that have requested it, because it's just a simple way to prevent the spread. So what can you all do to help? Number one, you're here, you're learning. That's fantastic. Learn how to identify species, clean gear, inspect your plant materials, avoid moving mulch or soil or compost. Don't transport firewood more than 50 miles. Remove small infestations whenever possible. Only plant native species. There's a lot of ornamentals. Just because it's at a greenhouse or at Home Depot does not mean it's native. So just paying attention to what you're planting. Report sightings of especially new species to the area, such as spotted lanternfly, and sharing your knowledge with friends and family. So getting back to the water quality and the watershed is, so just removing invasive species is not going to fix everything, but it's all working together to have a greater impact on the entire watershed and the water quality overall. So it is really important, and it all comes together. And of course, I have to plug our trail survey program. Our education outreach program manager, Laura Williams, is running the trail survey program, where you learn how to identify species in the field and learn how to report them. It's a whole citizen science effort that is fantastic. There's a couple virtual trainings coming up on June 9th and July 29th, and you can scan this QR code to register. If you do miss it, feel free to reach out to me as well. I'll let some folks scan quick before moving on. And do you need the scan? No, I'll go back to it in a minute. Thank you. That's all I got. And I have to end with all native species because I can't help it. Thank you. Anyone have any questions? I think I'll have you repeat it just for the folks on Zoom.
Are there any predators that could be used to control lanternflies?
Well, right now there are species. So the thing is spotted lanternfly can be eaten by birds and mammals, but research studies have shown since it feeds so much on tree of heaven, especially in the early stages when they're nymphs, they develop this chemical resistance that makes them unpalatable to wildlife and birds. And so wildlife have been seen foaming, birds don't like them. So they're really not eating them at the moment, which is why I think, and hopefully studies will show that if they aren't able to feed on tree of heaven, they will hopefully not develop those responses or the defense mechanism, and hopefully then more natural processes will be able to take over. But that is just a theory, so we'll see as research comes out. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. Do you want the QR code again?
Thank you again, Lydia. It's always illuminating to hear about invasive species. A little depressing sometimes, but also very important to know, especially when some invasive species that are here right now that are a very big threat, like HWA. Unfortunately, their PR person isn't as good as lanternflies, so they're much more popular and everyone knows about them much more than HWA. But HWA is here and it's a massive problem, and it's something that we're actually actively trying to address at Pure Waters. We are have a spraying program where we're trying to protect hemlock trees until the biocontrols can be introduced. So if you want to check that out, we have that program and a lot of other programs you can read about on our website, senecalake.org. Moving on, our final speaker is Ian Smith. He is the Seneca Lake watershed steward, and he's going to be here to talk about findings and discussing what future work can be expected from municipal work and some infrastructure work, if I understand that correctly. I'm sure he'll go into more detail on that and explain it better than I can. Ian?
How we doing out there? How we holding up? Good? All right. Try not to keep you too past your bedtime here, I promise. I usually go to bed at 7 o'clock with my 6-year-old, so that's gonna be a challenge for me. All right. I can't do that. So as been hinted at, I'm talking about roadside ditches and culverts. I'm sure plenty of you are intimately familiar with some of the less than ideal conditions we can find these in around the whole watershed. Before I get to that, though, of course, got to acknowledge all the help. This is not a solo effort. Thank you to my counterpart, Isaac Walker, who's the watershed manager for Cayuga Lake. This is a joint effort with their side of the drainage as well. Thank you to the town of Fayette for being the sponsor for this project. It's principally funded through the New York State Department of State. And for those who don't know, SWIO is funded through voluntary contributions from the municipalities within the watershed, funds myself, obviously. So thank you to everyone in this room, because you're all taxpayers and landowners, I'm sure, within our watershed. So thank you. Okay, before we start to actually talk about what we've done here and what we're actively still doing, let's talk about why we're doing it. We're trying to create a couple different goals here with the outcome of this effort, this first phase of this project. The most obvious is improving the ditch network around the watershed. I mean, we've seen it, eroding ditches, collapsing culverts. Obviously, we want to bring that up to a high standard so that we don't have those problems, so they don't contribute to downstream issues. So that's the principal focus. And once we finish this first phase, we'll just roll right into actual implementation and actually trying to do active improvement. The second side of this is just trying to compile information on the drainage network. It's not exactly easy to find the information you need to access the funding you need to get the work done. Traditionally, because we're, strapped for the most part at municipal level, a standard process is something like the 2008 Lodi flood, where we get 10 inches of rain in, 22 hours, comes through, blows out culverts, blows out ditches, and then we respond. And not only is that obviously not proactive, that's highly reactive. You also have to go to FEMA and other agencies to get financial assistance in a timely manner to improve what was destroyed. It's not always easy. The last time an assessment was done across the watershed was 1994 by Aaron Perazini, who's now the district manager at Seneca Soil and Water. So compiling that information to get access to that and implement it in a quickly manner, not exactly easy and not exactly accurate at present. And then a secondary goal is a lot of these systems, ditches, culverts especially, they're uniquely situated to potentially be avenues for secondary focuses beyond the ditches and culverts themselves. You can think of the outfalls of culverts, right? They convey water to a point discharge at the end of a culvert. That's potentially a really good place to locate best management practices. So for example, here at the bottom, my color blindness is affecting me. I can't actually see the pointer. This photo on the bottom right, there's a grass waterway that a farmer implemented at the outfall of a culvert at 96A here in Fayette. Conversely, you can see, anybody here live in the town of Varick or have a place in the town of Varick by chance? Oh, lucky you. You are home to the worst culvert I have seen in my many miles on this project. This is a 3-foot culvert diameter, extending about, trying to remember, 15 feet, free in the air. If it doesn't fall off this year, I'll be shocked. And you can see it's down cut in, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 tons of soil have been eroded because of that. So yeah, this is what we're fighting. This is what we're up against. But in addition to these BMPs, they're also potentially really good opportunities for direct sequestration. I know there's been some talk over the years about phosphorus removal directly from the water. The challenge with that is getting it at a high enough concentration. Ditches are one of the few places where we can observe them in high enough efforts where that may be feasible. So we are exploring that here in the next few months, potentially. Okay. Anybody have any idea how many miles of road, including private road, private shared roads, so not your driveways, are in the watershed? Any guesses? Not bad. You might want to take another one. Price is right. 2,634 miles. Anybody have any idea how many miles of ditch there are associated with that road? Exactly. It could be double that. But the better answer is we don't know. No one knows. No one's ever mapped it. We don't know what's out there. So that's why we started this effort, because we want to accomplish all these things, but we don't even know what's out there. Okay. So phase 1, assessment. How do we get to where we want to go with all these implementation goals? First, we have to figure out, where are we going to focus our efforts? 2,000 plus miles of road. That's a lot of space to cover. So we started in Seneca County. Let's at least make it somewhat manageable and feasible, and test our methodology too. So goals, quantify it so that we can easily rank, sort, prioritize where to focus our effort. Where are the worst spots, and assign a number based on, deterioration and impact. We looked at also a sub-basin level, the idea being maybe we can address an entire, basically, ditch and culverts that drain into, say, Reeder Creek. Maybe that's a sizable portion. We can do the entire network. I'll talk about what happened. We've kind of abandoned that. Of course, the goal is to ultimately do implementation. We have some of the 9E and TMDL tracking goals. We have quantified targets. So of course, we want to feed this information into that to help us track our progress towards improvement. And then a final goal here is outreach again, so that this information is easily available to those who need it. And then for direct deliverables, we have this assessment prioritization, a BMP schedule for, based on a prioritization, where are we going to do these improvements in the next phase, and then some sort of database and portal where people can pull that information when they need it. So to quantify the condition of this drainage network, we settled on these four, well, at least initially, we settled on these four criteria. We looked at the drainage basin surrounding the network, at a subscale. So basically each named stream or when they weren't named, enough of a group that we can identify it as around 100 to 300 acres in that range. We were looking at, based on the input, the numbers out of the modeling for both the Cayuga TMDL and the Seneca 9E, we made estimates on what is the quality and quantity of the water that's going into these ditches. And then, of course, we look directly in the condition of the ditches themselves. Are they eroding? Do they have controls against velocity if they're steep so that they don't, discharge at a high velocity into a receiving stream? For the culverts, we looked into their condition. Are they intact? Are they rusted? Are they collapsed? Are they conveying water? Are they perched? So that's like an impact. If they're raised, they can create erosional forces either into a receiving ditch or into a stream. And then, of course, we also had this last factor, which we'll call a weighting factor. Are there things we want to weight more than others? I'll leave it there for right now. Okay, so to quantify it, what we used is actually what underpins some of the more intense model, like the SWAT model in our 9E plan. It's this universal soil loss equation. It's what a lot of the models that soil and water districts, that watershed model and other watershed models use. The parameters that it requires to look at erosional conditions within the ditches are fourfold. You have the length of it, which we took via survey equipment. You have the depth, which is a direct measurement. It's an approximate average across its entire length. You have the soil weight, which we derive from soil maps at the county level. And then you have what's called the lateral recession rate. Sounds big and scary, but it's just a 0 to 1 number. Basically, how much exposed soil is there along the edge of the ditch that's readily erodible? If it's covered in grass, it's not going to erode. If it's, a 5-foot embankment of just loose soil, well, you've got a pretty sizable amount of soil that can erode. For the velocity, we used Manning's equation. We don't need to talk about the math. The controllable factor is this roughness, this N. And it's really tied down to basically what's the friction within that ditch. You can think of concrete, very smooth. If you go out to the parking lot out here on a really rainy day, you'll see water flow right across it, and it just like sheet flow instantly. Some of that's infiltration, but a lot of that is just, it's very smooth surface, easier for it to flow like a pipe. Conversely, if you were to look at, think of something that's really jaggy, rockety, probably seen line ditches everywhere, right? You break that velocity through that higher friction, it slows that water down before it outlets. And for the parameters that are tied to that roughness, essentially, you have a direct measure of that roughness through the material in it or not. And then DOT recommends add in things like rock to slow that velocity at certain slopes. So we also look at the slope. Anything above 6 requires some sort of velocity structure reduction system. It can be like rock lining or a check dam or something along those lines. And then obviously you get above that, you need a bigger stone, bigger rock, bigger check dams if you get to 10% or higher. And then we collect metadata that can help support, whenever you have to go get emergency response and you're looking for funding to implement work, things like that. Municipality, jurisdictional, who was responsible for that section of ditch or that culvert. And then any field notes that may be useful. On the culvert side, it's a little harder. We're not going to go through and calculate, runoff coefficients and delineations and all these things we would do through engineering analysis for whoever knows how many hundreds of culverts, right? We'll do that after we prioritize. So we kept it a little simpler, and it's more of a, good, better, best ranking, 1, 2, 3. We look at the condition of the inlet, the outlet. Is it collapsed? Is it rusted? Is it eroding around that pipe itself? Is the flow going underneath of it or next to it rather than through it? And then if there's a head wall, what's the condition of that head wall? Is it collapsing? Is it intact? Is it eroding behind it? And then as far as the impact, what is that outlet potentially doing once it does discharge? Is there a scour pool? Sometimes you'll see, especially with a perch culvert, you'll see basically an enormous pool at the bottom. Or conversely, you'll see a bank blown out either on a stream or a ditch. And then again, metadata that's useful for all sorts of other purposes down the road. Okay, so what did we find on the Seneca side? So ditches, and remember, this is just Seneca County. So 922 segments, and a segment is the way we defined a segment is basically when did we hit a stream or a public culvert or some break at some point, not private culverts. And that's an important distinction I'll talk about later. Of those 922 segments, they vary in length from 22 feet, quite short, to over 6,000. So 142 miles in total. Actually, less than I would have thought. Again, right? 2,000 plus miles of road. Could have been a lot more. Again, just Seneca County, though. Slope 0.03. Anyone who's driven along Lower Lake Road through Fayette knows it's really, really, really flat. But then you get down towards the forest, especially on those east-west roads, they get quite steep, 15%. And from the erosion side of things, 720 of those segments are what we consider in stable condition. They're not actively eroding. Doesn't mean they can't next time we get a giant storm, but they're stable. And 202 of those are currently actively experience erosion, 2/3 of which are what, again, that lateral recession rate, a limited amount of erodible material. The other third varies a lot to, could be feet deep in some cases. And then from the velocity side of things, again, that slope over 6%, 758 are below that threshold. They don't require any stabilization. 12 of the remaining are fully controlled. And then 104 are partially controlled. So a segment of them have some sort of velocity control, some sort of roughness feature into it. And 148 are completely unaddressed. So that's clearly a significant lack on that side. On the culvert side, 395 public culverts, roughly half, slightly less than half, are in perfectly good condition. There's no reason to replace them. They're doing what they're supposed to do. Only one of which is, again, lucky you, Varick, only one of which is what we described. Absolutely horrible, not working at all the way it's supposed to, and creating problems. Most of them somewhere in between. And then on the impact side, 265 are embedded, which is what we like to see. And then 203 are non-erosional scars, so they're not creating any visual impact to the receiving ditch or stream on the other side of the outlet. We do have this 27 NA. That's because some of these we could not get access to. A lot of these culverts, when you get down close to the lake, like along Lower Lake Road, or what is it, Lodi? I don't know if it's Lodi Point Road. I can't remember my roads off the top of my head. It's hard to find the outlets. There are some really complicated drainage systems there along the lake with quite some contraptions in people's driveways. We haven't been able to fully assess everything, unfortunately. So we do have these gaps. But if we try to visualize this information, I hate being colorblind. This left image is the culverts. Basically, the bigger the circle, the worse the shape. Smaller the circle, the better shape. So you need the distribution. It's kind of all over the place. And then this is only a slightly zoomed in segment. It's really hard to show this visually. On the right, we have the ditch networks. Yellow, bright yellow indicates highly eroding. Slightly turquoise indicates high velocity issues. And then if they're dark blue purple, then it's both. So you kind of see what that looks visually with the variance of color. That's really hard to display visually. And I'll talk about it a little bit when we get into the outreach, how we went with that. So again, ideally, when we first thought of this, we were going to do an entire sub-basin at a time and address the entire network. That was the idea. When we actually got out there and started doing this, it really did not work the way we thought. And there's a couple different reasons why, I think. But I think the single biggest one, if you look here, so what we have on these images are basically that similar ranking Of the three images, the far left is the basin for ditch segments, darker, worst within that basin, lighter, better overall. In the middle, it's culverts, same thing, and on the right is the combination of the two. The problem with this approach, though, is the range in our sample size within these basins is all over the place. So we had a ton of skewed information, and when we really dug into it, it just didn't work as a concept. You can see here the range in the population, ditch segments or culverts. For ditches, it could be anywhere from 2 segments within a basin to 121. That creates real problems. So especially when you get down into the southern portions of the county and Lodi, they get really tight north to south, the basins. So you have these really short segments on either side of the stream, say along 414, and that's your only 2 segments, and it's like 40 feet. Well, if they're in good shape, then that skews the entire basin. And it just didn't work, unfortunately, as a methodology. And you can see there's no correlation either no strong correlation between the condition of a culvert and the condition of the ditch within the same segment. So that really, the concept of the interconnectivity between, a bad ditch being associated with a bad culvert, them impacting each other. We just couldn't find that information. We couldn't find that through this approach anyway. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, that a lot of the culverts don't actually link to the road drainage network. You can think of, any stream, basically. Like, how many stream crossings are there along 414? Probably dozens. They may not have any interconnectivity with any road drainage at all. It may just be conveying stream. And that disconnect is probably skewing some of that information. And then the other big one that I kind of hinted at is we can't, at least not with public funding. We can't go out and incorporate private culverts into this either. And if we have a few hundred public, we probably have a few thousand private. So that's really being masked by this approach. So we went back, when we talk about phase 2 implementation, we're really prioritizing now around individual segments or individual culverts ultimately. Few conclusions from the data. East-west roads tend to be associated with worsening conditions. That's principally largely because of the whole velocity, right? We know the way that it slopes here is east to west. They get steeper east to west versus our roads north to south tend to follow the grade, so they don't tend to be associated or have to require any velocity control. The basin-wide impact, again, didn't really work. And then the lack of correlation between the culverts and ditches suggests limited impact of one on the other. And again, private culverts are probably an explanation for that. And then we do have this open question of how do we incorporate the culverts that we couldn't fully assess because we couldn't get access to one end of the pipe or the other. So open suggestions on that one. If you have any ideas, if anyone's creative with Excel formulas, by all means, let me know. Okay, the other side of this is sharing information. So another deliverable is creating some sort of portal to house this information in an easily accessible way, in a visually usable way, and to collect information easily to keep it updated over time. I'm going to show it here in just a second. We're still working on it, so I'll definitely take input after this or directly through questions, comments. But one of the hardest things is, a highway crew will go out, say, clean a ditch. Usually the soil and water districts are the one that have the hydroseeder, which is a quick way of stabilizing bare soil. Well, the communication of the work, where they're doing it, when they're doing it, it's not smooth. So we are really, really, really trying to find a way to improve that. And we're trying to integrate it with this interface as well to try to make that information really easy. One of the things we're currently exploring, and Mitch, maybe your daughter can help me with this. Esri has this new program for collecting field data really quickly, kind of like Survey 123, with some of you might be familiar with through the HABS monitoring program or through DEC's HABS database. where you can quickly go out and just press one button and it would go back to our portal and let the district know, hey, we were at this spot doing whatever work, say cleaning a ditch, replacing a culvert, whatever it might be, just one button done. So we're really trying to figure out how to integrate those two things right now to make that a little more seamless. And then for the actual information itself, one second. All right. So somewhat similar to NIHABs, we tried to stick with a similar format that people are familiar with, or we are potentially familiar with. Same idea. So we bring in our data, we use, same bigger circle was culvert. In this case, the road drainage networks are really tough because they're really close to each other. So they're hard to separate out, but darker color, worse condition. And then it's quite simple. You just let me find a culvert since I've got the information there a little better. But here's a fairly bad one, apparently. I don't even know where we are, actually. Just brings up a pop-up, just like NIHABs. It brings up the relevant information that someone can pull from. You can actually, we've been trying to bring in our ranking system visually to give people a quick idea of what it's like through our assessment. And then we actually have imagery too. That's the ditch. Let me see if I can find, I got to go in tight. Sorry, not good with this computer apparently. And then just like you can bring up a view of a bloom, we can bring up a view of the condition of the drainage feature. So that again, that we can easily update, hopefully, that can be pulled into an application. You can demonstrate need to FEMA, things like that. I don't know if anyone has any other ideas on what information might be of interest from, a non-municipal side of things, that by all means. And I will stop there, 7 o'clock.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. This is really important, but so many highway departments, so many other entities working together, as you said, hydroseeding and soil and water, towns doing highway stuff. Is there an opportunity for some sort of common platform, at least in the counties, to try to coordinate these kind of things? And then what can the public do? Second question, I guess, what can the public do to say, report, I see that my town has scraped off all this stuff. There's no hydroseeding. Where do I go? What do I do? How do I help?
Yeah. So as far as reporting, I mean, there's no reason why someone couldn't, you couldn't pull up that up, go out and put a place and report it and pop up, populate it on the map, right? That's the idea, right? If you get 100 reports, what does that matter, right? It's just all in the same rough geolocation. We'd have to go out and ground truth it anyway. So at least we'd know it's happening. So I don't see why that couldn't still happen. The collaboration side of it, right? That's part of the idea here, right? Can we build something that can be used by everyone? Realistically, DOT's, for better or worse, its own entity. Soil and Water District hasn't had great luck working with them on, projects in the past. They do have their own, they do things a little differently, of course, because they have the budget and manpower to do that. They have their own hydro seeder. So in theory, they should come out right behind the clean out and seed it that day as well. So if they don't do that, maybe the best thing we can do in that situation is put some sort of notification and try to reach out to our what is it? Tamalamosi is our regional DOT contact. As far as coordination across counties, towns, municipalities, that's trickier, right? Some of those do exist. One of the reasons we did Seneca County first is because we didn't have that coordination. Schuyler County, Jerry Verigny and Soil and Water there, they have their own equipment to do culvert replacement. So they've already kind of established a pretty good mechanism to work with the local municipalities to do that work. Every county is a little different. Every municipality is a little different. So, yeah.
Forgive me, Aaron, but there's 10 towns in Seneca County, and most of them have their own town highway department. And as far as citizen scientists, to answer your question, if you were so inclined, you could email the Seneca County Soil and Water. Just say, hey, they just cleaned a ditch out here on Farron Road, for example. I just came down here and I see they just cleaned a section of Farron Road by Noble Road. And if you wanted to, I don't want to overload Aaron, but the towns generally do the most of the ditch work. So if whatever town you're from, Seneca County Soil and Water incorporates the whole county. So send Seneca County Soil and Water an email, and it can't hurt, I don't think.
Yeah, don't disagree with that statement at all. I will say one of the advantages of something like this is it geolocates. So, Noble Road is, got multiple lengths, right? So the nice thing about a feature like this is one, it's self-populating, so it's like centralized, quicker, and geolocates versus an email with a description of Noble Road. It works, of course, but it's not quite as specific. That's the only thing. Yeah.
Well, you're in the field. Did you see any impact of agricultural drainage tile? And what is your general thinking on that?
The tile in terms of causing erosion? I have not seen any.
I'm wondering how much of the water in the ditch comes from drainage tile if you have a lot of agricultural field along the ditch, or whether or not there's erosion right around where the pipe comes out of the field, anything like that?
Well, occasionally you'll see a culvert placed at a tile outlet. That's often because they're both low spots, right? The farmer will put in drainage tile and feed to the lowest point within their field. And that lowest point, inherently is usually a low point for that drainage, the road drain as well. So there'll be a culvert there. So whether it's caused directly by the tile drain or the ditch or combination of the two, right? You can think you have flow potentially coming from three directions, right? The road sloping down towards a culvert from both ways, plus the tile line, right? That can create a weird hydrologic condition. Which one is causing it? Probably a combination of all three. So you do see that. You often see small scale erosion control at those outlets for that reason. Not always. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. So yeah, it's very site specific. I'll say you see more surface runoff than tile outlet causing erosion. Like there's plenty of places, whether it's ag or residential, wherever it might be, where you can see, a collapse along one of the banks of the ditch. And it's, at a surface runoff concentration point, not from an outlet. That's the thing I see more commonly.
Yeah, I've been watching these ditches for decades and I have so many questions. Like it seems like there's a cycle where vegetation is in the ditch, farm runoff starts collecting the sediment traps within all the vegetation, the ditch fills up, they come along and scoop it all out, exposing bare soil. So there's a period when it's until it revegetates, it's just eroding it deeper. Is there any kind of permanent way to break this cycle, I guess, so that you don't, or the county, are they trying to make all the ditches deeper everywhere county-wide or something? Or do they just have to keep removing soil that accumulates? And can they put all this soil somewhere useful that once they get it? I mean, it's just a lot of
Lots of questions.
Yeah,
So ideally, the depth of the ditch is controlled by the culverts within it. Culverts are sized for conveyance. So based on the analysis of the water flow into that culvert is how you properly size it. The ditches have to be dug to the depth of the invert elevation, the lower part of the pipe, so they can provide that conveyance. Unfortunately, over time, they do accumulate sediment. The only way you could prevent that would be to concrete line it so it just washes itself out like a pipe, which we don't want to do, obviously. So it's a recurring battle, unfortunately, right? Because erosion is a natural process. So.
Sort of a follow-up to Bill's question, but let's say you're observing what you call a bad ditch, a municipal ditch. What's your best option as far as trying to talk, somebody into improving it, either by hydroseeding or rock lining? Should you contact the town and their highway department? Should you contact yourself and SWIO, or do you contact the County Soil and Water Conservation District? Who is there a recommendation there that you might have to try to remediate?
So it's going to vary a little. I'd say the Soil and Water District is your best bet because they have the best existing network and some equipment to potentially handle it. Another thing you could potentially do is, one of the things we built in within the information portal is a jurisdictional determination. So if you know where it is, you can go and look it up and see who's responsible for maintaining that ditch. It could be the state, could be the county, could be the town, could be a village. So that's one of the big challenges that way. Another reason to contact the district. Yeah.
What's your overall feel as far as the town, wanting to remediate these things with the idea of making sure our lake stays safe and healthy? Do the towns seem to be involved in that, or do you find them so-so about it?
As far as maintaining them, yeah, I haven't seen any resistance to anyone wanting to maintain it properly. The challenge is, of course, budgetary. One of the reasons we've done this approach, going away from, emergency response is, reactive response, is to get proactive, and also to do it across scale so that we can target a large replacement at one time. That's kind of the goal here, right? And the towns have been on board and supportive of this project. They're the ones that are going to be doing most of the implementation in the next phase. So they've all been on board. They've all been to meetings when we first proposed this. It's just a question of capacity and money to get the materials to do it. Those are the factors that are ultimately the challenge.
The other counties are on the lake. Have they come to you to ask to do the same thing? Or do they have better inventories of what the current state is in Seneca?
To my knowledge, no one has an extensive inventory. Culverts are inventoried to reasonably good degrees. What does it stand for? National Aquatic Connectivity, NAC. I can't remember what the last C stands for. They provided funding throughout the Northeast, actually, to do an assessment of culverts conditions for aquatic passage predominantly, but that information also is useful from this perspective. And most of the counties, I don't know Chemung, so I can't quote Chemung, but the other counties, they have done it over varying frequencies over the years.
Just let people know how hard this was. I saw Ian once over by Upper Lake Road in 96A in the summertime, out in one of the ditches, completely wrapped, I think because of mosquitoes. A lot of hard work. Thank you.
Yeah, luckily Isaac's the mosquito magnet, so that's why I like when he goes with me. They like him a lot more.
You mentioned tiling, and I'm seeing more farmers tiling their fields, putting maybe more water in the ditches. What's the net effect of those? Is tiling good or is tiling bad, or no opinion?
Let's talk after this. That is a long question. I'll be happy to answer, but let's talk after this. I'll give him the long one, I promise. All right.
All right. Well, I would just like to reiterate real quick that while we did address a lot of the problems that Seneca Lake is facing right now, I think the solutions are not as far away as some people think they are. And I think that a large reason of that is because we're all in this room right now. We all care. It all matters to us, both here and online, and the people who watch this later. There's a lot of power in the number of people who care passionately about Seneca Lake. And we need to remember that when we're addressing these issues so that we don't get bogged down in the negativity. And we remember that we are making progress, we are gaining momentum, and we just need to keep going. And I really appreciate everyone who's here and everyone who's watching online. It's incredible that you are so passionate about this. I understand that a lot of you are just walk-ins, and I want to thank you for showing up today. I think that shows a lot of prerogative on your part, and I hope that you guys notice the volunteer and membership forms on your table. If you aren't already, please fill out the forms, get them back to me before you leave. I'd love to see you guys participate with us if you aren't already. And then beyond that, I just want to remind people to check out our website, senecalake.org. There's a lot of information there on everything from lake levels to our HABS program, to our HWA program, to our SNPR program. We're doing a lot of really important work, and we're doing a lot of great stuff. And sometimes it's hard to make sure that everyone knows what's going on. So I would encourage you to check out our website and also check out our social media accounts on Facebook. And I also want to thank our sponsors, Famous Brands, for providing a gift card, the Watershed Brewing, and Seneca Lake Wine Trail. They are the ones who provided the amazing locally produced beer and wine tonight, and I am absolutely grateful for that. Thank you so much. Also, just for anyone interested, we are going to upload this presentation along with the individual PowerPoints presentations as well, so you can do a deeper dive on that if you want. We have about 15 minutes left, so please grab another glass of wine, a glass of beer, and we have our raffle as well. And I'm going to announce the the winner for that. Please check with me, and I will mail you the Famous Brands gift card. Right now, the winner is 393-9633. All right. Check with me before you leave. Give me your name and address, and I will get it out in the mail on Monday to you. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm incredibly grateful for all of you. Thank you. Don't forget to tip your bartenders, so to speak.